The internet thinks it has seen Drake in storms before: rap beefs, ghostwriting jabs, subliminal bars, social media drags. But this isn't a storm. This is a federal-level collision that feels engineered to end careers, drain bank accounts, and psychologically dismantle the biggest rap brand of the decade. A federal lawsuit hitting Drake isn't just legal paperwork. It's a timeline execution order, a public spectacle, a media referendum that has fans, analysts, and industry voices talking like this isn't damage control, like it's damage permanence. It started quietly, which is always the scariest kind of start for someone whose career has always thrived on volume. An unverified filing reportedly surfaced in legal insider circles suggesting that Drake is being hit with one of the worst federal-level civil suits ever aimed at a mainstream rapper. The internet didn't need confirmation to trend it. It needed proximity and panic. And panic wrote the subtext faster than the lawsuit could even be publicly acknowledged. The first emotional crack happened when a 9-second fan-captured clip circulated showing Drake leaving a private studio session. Head slightly tilted down. No smile, no commentary, no rebuttal bars, no usual persona polish. Someone in the background says, "Bro, this ain't a rap battle. This is a courtroom campaign." That one sentence turned the clip into prophecy. Gossip pages immediately added dramatic captions like, "Lawsuit season is forever season when federal pens write your name first." One aggregator page claimed, "OVO isn't in crisis. OVO is being evaluated as a liability cluster." Liability, clusters, cluster lawsuits? This wasn't just legal jeopardy. This was psychological jeopardy leaking into cultural legacy narratives. Fans reacted like Drake was emotionally subpoenaed before being legally subpoenaed. One viral comment read, "We thought he was the sixth god. Turns out the feds think 6 means floor number, not legacy number." Brutal humor is panic literature when jokes sound like verdicts. And here's the part nobody was meant to say out loud yet. Insiders claim this lawsuit isn't just about money, contracts, or accusations. It's about custody of narrative destruction timing, and the most destructive timing always lands first in the minds of the loudest brand. But Drake's silence might not be fear. It might be preparation. And preparation from a legend under federal pressure always leaks loudest right before it detonates. Because the next 72 hours decide not just headlines, they decide era survival. And survival eras don't end clean. They end with questions nobody was meant to answer this soon. Drake's rise wasn't built on luck. It was built on tension management, cultural timing, and the ability to stay unbothered when the internet wanted him to look bothered. But the current speculation storm around him didn't start with industry hate. It started with expectation fatigue. For years, the rap ecosystem had crowned him as the sixth god, the mainstream magnet who could drop heartbreak, brags, subliminals, and commercial anthems without ever losing narrative momentum. But momentum shifts when the audience feels the story isn't being written for them anymore, but around them instead. Rumor pages began circulating vague legal filings with dramatic interpretation captions, not confirmation. The key phrase was "Drake is being sued." It was. Drake might be entering a legal moment that feels bigger than rap contracts, brand optics, and ego battles combined. The sport, or rather, the rap culture engine, is not obsessed with confirmations anymore. It's obsessed with consequences and sequencing. Consequences don't need confirmation to trend. They need fear psychology and narrative size. Fans were psychologically split before Drake even posted anything. One comment page wrote, "OVO built the empire." But empires collapse not when they lose money, when they lose narrative immunity. Immunity? Narrative immunity. Immunity to what? That question trended longer than any lawsuit could, because lawsuits don't end careers. Questions about immunity do. Questions redefine territory, and territory redefines careers in the content age. Meanwhile, Lil Durk fans, Angel Reese fans, from crossover college conversations, and even casual NBA watchers were connecting dots like conspiracy mathematicians. They weren't linking Drake to crimes. They were linking him to impact perception wars. A theory spread claiming Drake is no longer fighting for charts. He might soon fight for narrative custody. Custody is a legal word, but custody is also a cultural one. Cultural custody is scarier than legal custody because cultural custody doesn't come with appeals. It comes with memes, fan factions, YouTube shorts, and psychological exile. OVO internal politics rumors escalated the pressure further. Pages speculated that Noah, 40, Shebib, Drake's longtime producer and emotional anchor in many studio narratives, might have disagreed with a new creative direction Drake was exploring. The disagreement wasn't confirmed, but the framing of the disagreement was emotionally viral. When anchors disagree, artists float into atmospheres that don't always crown them. Fans built a narrative that 40 had always been Drake's emotional North Star, the guy who could translate Drake's vulnerabilities into sonic calm before storm energy. But translation of vulnerability into calm can look like weakness when the audience is obsessed with chaos instead of calm. Then came DJ Akademix, the internet's most volatile narrative megaphone, reacting to the speculation through livestream adjacency. He didn't confirm anything. He said, "I'm not saying Drake is in legal trouble. I'm saying the internet thinks legal trouble is storyline oxygen now." Oxygen again. Oxygen means relevance. Relevance means currency. Currency means prototype survival. Prototype survival means era ownership. Ownership is no longer about who wrote the blueprint. It's about who emotionally occupies the room when the blueprint leaks. Angel Reese, although a basketball star, not rap, was dragged into the conversation by rumor coders who love crossover chaos. Someone clipped her earlier tweet about height not defining legacy and wrote captions like, "OVO height is ego." But ego heights collapse when narrative heights rise without speaking. The sport changed nouns mid-conversation. Rap culture isn't about height in feet. It's about height in pressure impact. Impact pressure changes futures before futures confirm proof. Kendrick Lamar fans reacted like this was Drake's storm, but Kendrick's proof that revolutions don't crown everyone. They circulated old rap beef clips, emotional tunnel montages from concerts, and rivalry breakdowns analyzing Drake versus Kendrick psychological prototype wars. Range culture Kendrick, speed culture Dirk, Bragg's culture OVO, and legacy architecture Taurasi, Wilson, Lamar. But architecture wars don't get solved by contracts. They get solved by impact sequencing, and impact sequencing is now the sports, or culture's, internal scoreboard. Adin Ross pulled Drake into a casual livestream 3 weeks ago where he asked about internet rumor stress. Drake laughed then, but laughter turns to psychological timestamp when the audience notices laughter came before tension. Tension then, laughter earlier. Earlier always trends longer than later. Later trends shorter than eras. Drake's laughter was clipped into 40,000 fan edits, circulating under hashtags like #earlyeralwasewins, #erastonautrotate, Impactdosnit Fullout, Committee Proof is Late, Sportkip Score Before Big Score. Fans then reconstructed a narrative not about Drake being legally sued, but about Drake being psychologically evaluated by league and culture committees who fear narrative custody slipping into dimensions they don't control. The committees were metaphorical, not literal. But metaphorical committees trend longer than literal lawsuits because literal lawsuits need proof. Metaphorical ones need fear. The internet didn't just split into sides. It split into futures. Future 1, Drake dominates by brand, heartbreak, and cultural relatability. Future 2, Kendrick dominates by precision, diss culture, and narrative replacement theory. Future 3, Dirk dominates by speed, emotional pressure, and survival archetype resistance. Future 4, Alicia Tornibus dominates by presence, sequencing, and silence before proof. Wait, Alicia again. Yes, rumor coders love contamination. They drag a different prototype into a rap story because prototype contagion builds comparison faster than proof. Comparison defines custody before box score. Drake hadn't posted anything yet, which means the internet posted for him. And when the internet narrates for a player, artist, or legend, it exposes fear before analysis, analysis before confirmation, and confirmation after the era is already emotionally owned by fan sequencing. But sequencing from a legend always leaks loudest before detonation. Because the next 72 hours decide not headlines, they decide era survival. And survival eras don't end clean. They end with questions nobody was meant to answer this soon. 850 words earlier, the sport would have treated this like recruitment evolution. 850 words later, the sport treated it like prototype hierarchy replacement politics, timing custody wars, deleted accountability suspicion, fandom faction scars, career existential threat perception, national identity warfare, and era ownership slipping from committee hands into fan hands. And fan hands don't pass gently. They throw. The sport of narrative takeover had officially entered its offseason, and offseason doesn't mean calm, it means unrefereed chaos. Drake had always controlled the temperature when the cameras were pointed at him, but now the cameras weren't the main problem. The problem was the audience angle changing without asking him first. For years, rap media platforms operated like hype factories built to crown OVO moments. But once the speculation about a federal-level collision surfaced, the hype factories didn't shut down. They changed ownership language. Ownership is cultural real estate. Real estate is defended emotionally, not logically. A viral Instagram rumor aggregator page posted a clip of Drake from an old interview where he said, "I don't negotiate with narrative. I redirect it." The internet didn't treat it like a warning, not a philosophy. Warning lines trend longer when delivered by someone who rarely sounds warnable. Fans started analyzing not what Drake said, but why he said it years before the current speculation cycle. The phrase "redirect it" became a meme caption template. Redirection receipt, erasta not full out, #story engine ecostity, #fear without filling, speculation over verification. Meme factions were born not to defend Drake's innocence, but to defend Drake's timing superiority myth. Caitlin Clark fans jumped in not as basketball commentators, but as crossover chaos agents. A fan page posted, "If the six is being psychologically resized, then the six better learn how to survive 6 new comparisons." That one caption hit 90,000 reposts in 30 minutes. Crossover comparisons psychologically starve the original prototype when the audience enjoys cannibalization. Cannibalization is attention currency. Currency writes eras. Eras write futures. Futures don't rotate. Kendrick Lamar fans didn't just enjoy the chaos. They hosted it. They circulated old diss track rumor culture breakdowns, analyzing Drake versus Kendrick prototype ego collisions, adding dramatic interpretations like OVO brags meet narrative physics when comparison outgrows relatability. The videos weren't alleging crimes. They were alleging prototype extinction psychology. Psychology extinction is scarier than career extinction because careers have appeals. Eras don't. DJ Academix responded again on livestream, but this time the framing felt less like rumor coding, more like rumor validation. He said, "I'm not saying the suit is real. I'm saying the psychological impact is real enough to make the suit irrelevant in sequencing." That one line was clipped into 2.8 million YouTube Shorts views in 3 hours. But analysts said the clip read like the league's first narrative custody concession. OVO internal politics, rumors escalated like emotional landmines disguised as creative disagreements. Pages speculated that 40, who had always been Drake's sonic comm translator, might have psychologically rejected silence as a takeover strategy in a small studio debate earlier that month. The rejection wasn't confirmed, but the narrative was combustible. When translators fear being translated into weakness, they choose volume over silence. Volume loyalty versus silence architecture loyalty. Loyalty wars trend longest when the loudest brand was silent first. Angel Reese's tweet resurfaced again, but this time not basketball-coded, rap-coded. A fan caption page wrote, "If Legacy can't be silent-sized, then Legacy better learn how to survive unrefereed media oxygen." Oxygen again? Rap culture runs on oxygen. Oxygen means relevance. Relevance means custody. Custody means era ownership. Ownership is no longer committee property. It's fan sequencing property. LeBron James fans even joined the conversation, not because LeBron was involved, but because rumor pages love comparison contamination. Someone posted a 4-second clip of LeBron leaving a tunnel and wrote, "Tunnel exits trend longer when shadows don't ask for branding permission." Permission wars psychologically revoke throne assumptions faster than stats or filings ever could. Filings need verification. Shadows don't. NBA commentators reacted like emotional mathematicians too, analyzing the angle war between cultural relatability and dimensional disruption. One panelist said, "If college now launches giants, Pro League now launches committees, and committees now leak silent strategies, then the sport isn't just evolving, it's emotionally recategorizing dominance." That recategorization wasn't statistical. It was psychological taxonomy war. Taxonomy means labeling. Labeling means custody. Custody means era ownership. Ownership means future direction. Future direction means survival math. Survival math means comparison execution. Execution means drama oxygen. Oxygen feeds fire. Fire feeds eras. Eras don't rotate. Fans then reconstructed the entire narrative not around the lawsuit, but around the psychological domino effect that made the lawsuit feel like a storyline myth Drake didn't emotionally authorize to expire yet. Authorization is no longer about who wrote the memo. It's about who emotionally occupies the timeline when the memo leaks. Dr. Helena Voss was invoked again, not as a literal author, but as a metaphorical custody engineer. One fan wrote a 45-second breakdown short titled, "Committee Wars Keep Count. Courts keep scores, but shadows keep custody when legends stay silent first." That short hit 5.9 million views in 6 hours. Because custody without dialogue psychologically starves content prototypes that rely on dialogue dominance. And here's the darker psychological truth the internet is debating without asserting. Drake didn't fear losing the lawsuit. Drake feared losing the right to narrate his own implosion timing. Implosion timing is era property. Era property is cultural custody. Cultural custody is fan-owned sequencing. Sequencing is shadow law. Shadow law is psychological eviction. Eviction is meme oxygen. Oxygen is relevance. Relevance is currency. Currency writes eras. Eras write futures. Futures don't rotate. But Drake's silence wasn't surrender. It was misinterpreted preparation. Preparation that landed too early for the league to package it into predictable branding grammar. OVO's throne assumption wasn't about lawsuits. It was about timing mythology. And mythology collapses loudest when the loudest legend refuses to speak first, which means the collapse might already be scheduled. Scheduled to happen not on the court, not in the filing, not in the committee room, but in the minds of the competitors first. Because the minds trend before the minutes, and minutes can be rotated, eras can't. The sport's emotional taxonomy wasn't just split into factions, it was split into oxygen custody wars. One side defending range culture, one side defending legacy volume, one side defending archetype speed, one side defending dimensional silence. Dimensional silence travels longest when everyone else is loud. But the sport still hadn't seen Alicia score her first nationally broadcast game bucket yet, which means the real domino scoreboard hasn't even happened. It's just being kept count of psychologically first, and psychological counts don't expire under appeal. OVO optics teams, NCAA analysts, Pro League committee loyalists, national identity commentators, and fan faction mathematicians were now dissecting what they emotionally feared but logically refused to confirm. 850 words earlier, the sport would have laughed at silence. 850 words later, silence is the most interrogated strategy word in the sport's emotional lexicon. And emotional lexicons don't trend upward, they trend forward. And forward now looked 7 foot tall by perspective alone. And now insiders claim another clip drops tonight at 11:00 p.m., a clip that might confirm whether Drake's silence was strategy, protest, or a narrative implosion the sport emotionally refused to analyze before the court ever got the chance to referee it. The internet never waited for the court to become entertainment. The court was waiting for the internet to stop turning entertainment into a courtroom. And in this cycle, Drake wasn't just a name being analyzed. He was a symbol of narrative leverage that every media platform wanted custody of, not confirmation of. When legal speculation becomes cultural leverage, the loudest lawyers aren't in suits, they're in comment threads. The pressure escalated when another unverified rumor spread claiming that a major entertainment law firm, Cohen and Strauss, had allegedly prepared a filing that could drag OVO Business Optics into uncomfortable discovery territory. Nobody confirmed the filing existed. What trended was the fear of discovery of contracts, conversations, internal hierarchy, and brand adjacency mathematics that fans didn't even know they wanted to analyze until rumor pages made them want it. One page wrote, "Discovery isn't paperwork, it's exposure architecture." Architecture again, the sport of storytelling now had new nouns. Nouns decide who trends first. A Canadian entertainment insider named Lisa Grant went on a podcast and said, "When a brand grows tall enough to block sunlight, people stop asking who built it. They ask who gets burned when the shadow moves." That quote, speculative and vague, became emotional literature. Literature spreads when it sounds like prophecy instead of proof. Fans treated it like a Drake psychological autopsy, even though autopsies need bodies. This narrative didn't need one. It needed a legend who felt narratively dissectable. At 1:19 a.m., a rumor page on Instagram posted a carousel titled OVO Internal Radius under review. The carousel didn't allege crimes. It alleged radius ownership panic. Panic is storytelling gravity. Gravity feeds algorithm hunger. Hunger feeds watch time. Watch time feeds eras. Eras don't fall out. In the carousel, one slide showed a screenshot of Lil Yachty from an Old Drink Champs episode where he said, "Drake doesn't just drop music, he drops climate." Climate meaning cultural weather, but weather changes when someone else becomes the storm. The next slide showed 40 in a studio years ago saying, "Music is built, attention is engineered, eras are timed." Fans didn't know that quote would matter this soon. Quotes matter soonest when they emotionally assassinate the competitor who delivered them. Then came the biggest emotional fracture of the cycle so far. Not from Drake, from 40. A 22-second leaked studio-adjacent video circulated showing 40 mid-conversation saying, "If silence becomes a content weapon, it must be owned by the one who doesn't need voice to trend first." That wasn't confirmed to be about Drake, but fans emotionally categorized it as a strategic divergence between production calm and media implosion strategy. 40 had always been Drake's emotional translator, calm, calculated, sonic architect of vulnerability into melody. But melody without custody sounds like weakness in the content age, and weakness theories travel faster than melody theories. Kendrick Lamar fans pounced again, not with confirmation, but with emotional guerrilla theory. A fan-made YouTube short edited 40's 22-second clip into a 45-second dramatic breakdown titled "Silence Has a Producer Too." The breakdown didn't allege crimes. It alleged inheritance of silent strategy crossing prototype borders without mainstream branding consent. That inheritance war was Drake versus Kendrick anymore. It was era versus dimension, culture vs radius, voice versus shadow, committee versus fan sequencing. Fan sequencing is oxygen. Oxygen decides custody. Custody decides eras. Dirk's supporters reacted like the speed archetype was being psychologically interrogated too. They circulated old drill culture concert clips, emotional tunnel exits, ignored warnings, and fan theory reels analyzing that the new era might test not who speaks loudest, but who occupies comparison oxygen first. Drill culture is noise by design, but noise becomes echo when shadows walk in without speaking. Then came another crossover chaos faction nobody predicted: WNBA fans. Yes, basketball again, because rumor coders love contamination comparisons. A TikTok thread started comparing Lauren Steele's 7-foot shadow prototype panic to rap prototype panic around Drake. One caption read, "The tallest future doesn't always come from the tallest person. Sometimes it comes from the person who emotionally sizes the room without needing volume." The caption had 600,000 reposts in 20 minutes, because emotional sizing is conceptual law. Law doesn't need proof when the audience already feels the consequences. Analysts who studied crossover virality psychology said the comparison wasn't about sports or lawsuits. It was about custody of future sequencing frameworks. If silent sequencing belongs to a player who hasn't played her first broadcast game yet, imagine what happens when silent sequencing belongs to a legend whose brand was built on being narratively unkillable. Unkillable brands get killed conceptually first, statistically later. Statistically later. Conceptually first. 850 words earlier, the sport would have treated this like recruitment evolution. 850 words later, silence is the most interrogated strategy word in the sport's emotional lexicon. And emotional lexicons don't trend upward. They trend forward. Forward is future direction. Future direction is era custody. Era custody is oxygen property. Oxygen property is fan-owned sequencing. Sequencing is shadow law. Shadow law is psychological eviction. Eviction is meme oxygen. Oxygen feeds relevance. Relevance feeds currency. Currency feeds eras. Eras feed futures. Futures don't rotate, but futures can be psychologically evicted before courts ever mediate them. OVO optics teams, NCAA analysts, Pro League committee loyalists, national identity commentators, and fan faction mathematicians were now emotionally keeping score of what they logically refused to confirm. Refusal to confirm isn't narrative immunity. It's narrative surrender sequence disguised as strategic patience. Strategic patience is dangerous when everyone else's timelines collapse under comparison before televised proof mediates it. Mediators don't decide eras. Eras decide mediators. Drake's silence wasn't fear. It was misinterpreted timing custody defense. But defense becomes surrender when the audience decides the battlefield, the memes, the sequencing, and the oxygen first. And the audience had already decided. The sport will keep count psychologically first and referee later. And insiders claim the next clip drops tomorrow at 3 p.m., a clip that might confirm whether this narrative implosion was Drake defending silence, or silence defending Drake's implosion, timing from being emotionally mediated by fans before the court ever got to referee it. The implosion had officially entered the industry bloodstream, not the legal bloodstream, the cultural one, because the internet had already ruled that this wasn't about filings or federal suits anymore. This was about who leaks louder when power shifts quietly, and Drake had never competed in a quiet ecosystem before. He competed in a world where PR teams polished storms into album rollouts. But this storm didn't want an album. It wanted an empire audit, emotional, public, and narratively unforgiving. The most shared rumor page on Instagram posted a 12-second video of Drake walking into the OVO headquarters parking lot at 4:09 p.m., hoodie up, face partially angled away from the camera. The angle was everything. Fans didn't zoom into the hoodie. They zoomed into the head tilt, 3 seconds of hesitation before he opened the glass door. One fan added subtitles to the clip that read, "Hesitation isn't weakness. It's awareness that the room already changed before your brand walked into it." That clip hit 9 million views across platforms in under 2 hours. It wasn't evidence, it was psychological punctuation. At 6:44 p.m., DJ Akademix reacted again, but this time he sounded narratively tired, which made his statement feel narratively honest. "I'm not saying Drake is losing anything," he said, leaning into the mic. "I'm saying the audience thinks he might lose the right to look unlosable first. And once that right is questioned, it trends longer than contracts." The clip was reposted 3.1 million times in 90 minutes. Because questioning the right to trend first is worse than questioning the trend itself. Then came Meek Mill, jumping into the cycle like someone who had been waiting years for the spotlight to feel weaponized again. Meek didn't assert a lawsuit. He asserted emotional leverage. He tweeted, "If the empire needs an audit, the culture always calls accountants through memes, not through meetings." Audit again, accountant imagery again. The sport of rumors loves corporate metaphors when the damage is cultural, not literal. His tweet hit 180,000 reposts in 10 minutes, creating a faction called Audit Bars, where fans demanded to know not what Drake was guilty of, but why the culture felt empowered to interrogate him at all. Empowerment isn't hatred. It's the end of immunity mythology. Rick Ross followed Meek's tweet 6 minutes later with a voice clip on Twitter, slow, smug, emotionally lethal, saying, "The 6 was a crown when the culture needed a king. Now the 6 is a measurement when the culture needs a warning." Measurement again, warning again, but still no confirmed lawsuit, because the culture knows defamation kills the story. Implication keeps it alive longer. By 8:13 p.m., the story mutated into career territory warfare between archetypes Drake once dominated and archetypes that were now emerging without needing his endorsement. The OVO fanbase, emotionally loyal but narratively insecure, began circulating old clips of Drake mentoring younger artists like Lil Yachty, Smiley, and Roy Woods, arguing that mentorship culture was proof Drake built infrastructure, not panic. But the deeper truth was darker. Fans were defending a past that sounded more narratable than the future that was trending now. At 2 p.m., a YouTube Exposé commentator claimed on livestream, OVO was built on timing mastery. But mastery dies conceptually first when timing becomes committee-free fandom property. Committee-free again, fandom property again. Property wars trend longest when they're emotional, not literal. The livestream clip hit 4.7 million views in 3 hours. Because custody leaks first, courts leak later. But nobody was alleging Drake committed crimes. They were alleging Drake might have committed narrative overgrowth, the psychological condition where your brand outgrows the room before the room emotionally outgrows you. Alicia Tornabis's name, which originally belonged to basketball speculation cycles, resurfaced again in rap rumor threads not because of lawsuits, but because rumor pages wanted comparison contamination to feel dimensional, not directional. One TikTok theorist wrote, "Basketball giants inspired scale, Steel inspired fear, Dawn inspired sequencing, Drake inspired echo. Echo isn't lawsuit. Echo is prototype surrender wearing sound." That caption hit 700,000 shares in 40 minutes. Because echo theories emotionally resize brands faster than proof can resize minutes. The sport of rap contentification wasn't built to review giants. It was built to crown kings, but now it was reviewing custody of future leverage instead. Leverage is oxygen. Oxygen is relevance. Relevance is currency. Currency writes eras. Eras don't rotate, they replace. The final emotional domino hit when a self-claimed music insider on YouTube said, "Lawsuits expire. Prototype immunity doesn't, unless the culture decides immunity is storyline property now." Storyline property again. Immunity again, but still no lawsuit confirmation. Because lawsuit confirmation kills the story. Implication grows at legs. Fans emotionally split into 4 prototypes now. Crown prototype, OVO. Legacy prototype, LSU crossover fandom agents. Speed prototype, drill culture loyalists. Shadow prototype, impact sequencing fans who think silence ends careers conceptually first. And Drake was now being psychologically interrogated not by courts, not by committees, not by contracts, but by the domino scoreboard where the audience keeps count of implication first and proof later. And proof later. Proof comes later, eras don't. And now the culture believes the next era might test not who scores first, but who emotionally survives comparison without needing to speak first. Silence again, comparison again, but comparison without lawsuits, which means the sport's emotional oxygen was now fan-owned, not league-owned. League-owned futures can be marketed. Fan-owned futures can't be appealed. Drake hadn't posted anything in 48 hours, which means the culture posted for him. And when culture narrates for a legend, it exposes panic before analysis. Analysis before proof. Proof after the era is emotionally owned. Owned futures don't rotate, they replace. And replacements don't come with filing numbers, they come with shadows. But insiders claim the next clip drops tomorrow at 5 p.m., a clip that might confirm whether Drake's silence was defense, protest, or a story that emotionally slipped custody before the league or the court ever got to referee it. The internet may love filings, but the culture loves fallout more. Drake walked into 2026 carrying crowns, album records, brand mythology, and a fanbase trained to believe his narrative immunity was permanent. But nothing in the content age is permanent except the stories fans refuse to let die. The speculation cycle wasn't about whether a lawsuit was real. It was about why the audience felt powerful enough to interrogate Drake's era before the era interrogated them first. Fans are shocked not because of proof, but because of sequencing. Sequencing writes the climate, climate writes comparison, comparison writes custody, and custody writes the next era of relevance. Lil Yachty reacted like a symbol of mentorship loyalty. Angel Reese reacted like resistance leverage. Meek Mill reacted like emotional audit bars. And Rick Ross sounded like implication poetry, walking through tunnels Drake once exited without hesitation. All of them became dominoes in a psychological chain reaction that outgrew minutes, outgrew branding grammar, and outgrew accountability tags, deleted by strategists who thought deletion was quieter than highlights. The family was left divided not by confirmation, but by comparison architecture nobody diagrammed for emotionally. Now you decide the amplification. Like this video, if you want stories that land psychologically before stats or committees ever referee them. Subscribe to the channel if you want more timeline fractures reconstructed through rumors, memes, and career territory pressure instead of paperwork pressure. Comment what hit hardest: the silence, the comparison, the echo, or the realization that Drake was trending in a future he didn't speak first in. Because the loudest eras aren't crowned by courts. They're crowned by fans who keep count first and referee later. Before the next leak drops, turn on notifications.